Ladies Who Lunch is a pretty decent episode of Wings. This is the 8th episode of the 3rd season. It's directed by Andy Ackerman, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I talk about the episode and share some thoughts. I don't have a tremendous amount of notes with this one, and I do feel like maybe the first 2/3 are a little slow. And that's not necessarily a complaint in the sense that I wasn't enjoying it. I just feel like it took a long time for anything to happen. But once things did happen, it became amazing. We have a subplot that I'll deal with very briefly. I don't mind it. It's not the most amazing thing ever. But Faye is trying to touch the First Lady because she has touched several First Ladies before this, and this is because the President has a layover and the First Lady is travelling with the President, and she wants to try and touch the First Lady. It's okay, it's definitely filler, but it's not too bad, and how that ended with Roy was pretty entertaining. I definitely didn't mind it. The main story, though, is where things get interesting. Again, slow to begin with, but it does pick up. Jo is fed up of Gail and Helen bickering. Very well written exchange between the two of them, certainly at the beginning when they're fighting. Well, fighting is too strong a word, but they are making fun of each other, basically. Very well written, great delivery of the lines, but Jo is not happy. And he tells them, you need to learn to get along. And in particular, he tells Helen, if you can't get along, we can't be friends anymore. And to her credit, whereas Helen previously, I think, would have flown off the handle, she immediately realised that Jo was being serious and she went and apologised to Gail. Gail apologised. They thought that they could draw a line under it. No, that's not enough for Jo. He tells them to spend lunch together. It's just one lunch out of their lifetime. They can't really argue with that. So they do. And they have a lovely lunch and a couple of bottles of wine, and everything is actually going really well for them. And Jo initially kind of worries because of something Brian said, that they'll be comparing notes about him. And actually, that is what happens. They do end up making fun of Jo. Bit harsh, but within the context of the episode, very funny. The noises Helen made when she was running in with Jo's underwear, very, very entertaining. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. This picks up, I'd say, after the halfway mark, and from there, it just escalates because Jo and Helen are alone, and this is a huge spoiler. I've seen this episode before. I couldn't remember exactly what happened. I definitely didn't see it coming. They end up kissing, and Gail obviously witnesses this, and it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. What does this mean? Have Gail and Jo broken up? Are they getting back together, Helen and Jo? I'm not going to say, of course. I do know what happens roughly. My memory's not great, so I can't remember exactly what happens in the next few episodes, but obviously long term I know what happens. But I really enjoyed this episode. Yes, definitely slow to begin with. The pacing wasn't great, and for, I'd say, roughly a half to 2/3 of it, not a lot happens. But from the point when Helen and Gail are enjoying each other's company, it became funny and then suspenseful, and I rather enjoyed it. And then, as I said, what happens with Roy, with his part of the story with Faye, pretty good as well. Ladies Who Lunch may not be perfect, but ultimately I thought it was a really enjoyable episode of Wings.